Well, before we get into our next topic, let's welcome Chris Retzler, Needham and Company to the panel. Glad you could join us. Meantime, the federal government is, well, they're coming under fire as a rather shocking new report from the Competitive Enterprise Institute found that American taxpayers, we spend $1.88 trillion for federal regulations that we did not ask for. And if we break that down, it's a hidden tax of nearly $15,000 for every single household in America. So far, the Obama administration has averaged, we're talking about major regulations, 81 major regulations during his 6 years in office. Bush administration averaged 62 regulations over 8 years. And we're not talking about little itty-bitty ones. But Jim, when we start talking about regulations and, oh, there's too many regulations, I think people glaze over. They just... Well, they don't see the calculator.
Somebody has to draw the circle for them, and the circle is that this economy into this recovery is growing at about half the rate that it should, based on the economics.
Right.
And several people ascribe that to federal regulations that have been put into place as a result of the financial crisis and other regulations have been put together politically. We need to have that national debate. There's an election coming up. There are a lot of people who want to be president, and I think you'll see several of the Republican candidates addressing this issue to the American population. We have to have a change in regulatory culture in this country.
But you know, Chris, let's get you on this because there's no fingerprints on it. I mean, that's the thing, is that nobody can blame one party or the other. It's just this vague regulation environment.
It's a lot of fingerprints down in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, it's really hurting the small businessman. The regulations are putting a tax on them. They are the job creators in this country. And until we get them off their back, it's going to be a slow growth environment. And as an investor, that's what we're prepared for. So we're very concerned. We'd love to see a change in the White House in 2 years because we do think that that's what's needed.
All right, Joni, your world is jobs and regulations. How do regulations get in the way of me wanting to hire somebody?
Well, I think it's the regulations, it's actually the cost to comply with all these regulations. And so it does impact small business, mid-size, large businesses across the board, the cost that it could take just to keep them in compliance, depending on what it may be, from a safety standpoint, from a health standpoint. There's so many different regulations out there. So it actually can cause businesses to maybe step back a bit from hiring. And certainly a small business may not want to invest and grow and add to their payrolls because then they have to comply with even more regulations.
Especially, Chad, if you start a small business, it's fine in the beginning, then you hire somebody. Oh, my gosh, here comes the paperwork, the rules, the accountants, and everything else, just for one employee.
Do I have to provide health insurance? I don't know. There's big question marks. This has a drag on capital spending and as well as, obviously, as Joni said, on hiring, which has a drag on human capital. Yeah. So what we actually need to see is a reinvestment back into a corporation, okay, to provide more jobs and get up and go.
But Heath, that's exactly what people argue about. It's, oh, you're just given to the fat cats. That's all.
Well, and I just came back from the world's largest democracy. I was in India a couple weeks ago. There are very little regulations. And I was reading in the Financial Times there, India is now growing at a faster rate than China. There's a reason for that. When you have all of these regulations, not just on the small business owner, but also on environmental regulations, on health regulations, it prevents people from moving forward. Coming back to this country, and I'm not saying we live in an incredible country. I'm so proud of this country. But when you really notice the difference between being in a country for a week without having any regulations. I haven't been to India,
but boy, you want to see deregulation, go to Hong Kong and watch what happens over there. All right, you don't want to miss this tonight. Strange Inheritance.